Alright student, fine. Girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm good evening to one and all. We are here at day 24 of our Python SQL Django series and the day 62 of our entire full stack web development series that is going on right from September 1st, 2023. Alright, otherwise audibility, visibility all set to go ahead. Please give us an acknowledgement message in the chat section so that we can go ahead. Hope there is no delay and the things are moving on smoothly. Fine. Yes, Navin, I'll be talking about the notes quick. Okay, fine. I think that's some problem at our end and we've somehow delayed sending you the documents, the PY files and all, right? But without fail, all the things that you have asked for, we shall be forwarding on the group today itself. Okay, fine. That's one thing. Alright, extend class up to 6:20 p.m. There is a small changes in the today's schedule. Now what we have decided is we will cover up today only the topic related to SQL database connectivity. A new topic that is regular expression we will begin with Friday. That is on Friday. Is that okay? Fine. Otherwise that will be too much of confusion here and there. As all we are 15 minutes late and we have not gone as what was planned. Okay, fine, good. All let's go ahead please. Yesterday we were talking about Python connectivity with MySQL database. So first of all, we actually went into SQL workbench and we tried to create one table and a database. Before that we created one connection. I'm using yesterday's connection, that is day 23. Fine. Meanwhile, people can also post me in the chat section how many of you tried installing MySQL and creating a database. Okay, right from the class since yesterday to today. How many of you actually attempted to do that? Were you able to do also or not? Did you face any issue? Were you able to install using PIP? Using PIP command, were you able to install MySQL connector Python or not? Alright, fine. So this is day 23. I attempt to access the same connection. Alright. I enter my password. You're going to enter your respectively. Fine, very soon the editor will open or the workbench will open and we can start editing, writing queries. But today we are not spending time in writing query. One table which I created yesterday, that is student table, and a database also I created that was by the name database 1. Okay, we will try to open in Python. Okay, so for that yesterday I think these 1 or 2 lines of code we had already written and then somehow we got stuck up in Visual Studio Code. Fine. So first of all, I'm importing my module MySQL.connector and using the connect function of MySQL connector, people using the connect function, we are connecting to MySQL server. Alright, we are connecting to MySQL server. So when you connect to MySQL server, you will be asked to enter 3 arguments at least. What is the name of the server? आपके लैपटॉप कंप्यूटर पे जो MySQL सर्वर इंस्टॉल्ड है उसका नाम क्या है? If you don't know the name, simply write localhost. That's a safe option. On the server, whose account you want to log in into, whose account access you want, root, it's an administrator and that's the only one account available right since the time of installation, and the password. Okay, just as of now, if I comment this line of code and I run these 2 lines to check whether everything is fine or not. Okay, so my code is working perfect. Okay, that means there is no error. I hope you got my. Now suppose I do not give any password here. Okay, so I don't give any password or maybe I give some wrong password. Alright, fine. So it gives me an error. And what's an error here? Access denied for the user root. Okay. Fine. So no password or wrong password, that means access is denied for the user root. Fine. One last time. If you have remembered connect function after connecting to MySQL server, I repeat, after connecting to MySQL server, the connect function returns the connection detail back to the program. This is going to act as a pointer, people. Try to understand. And the connection detail returned from the connect function we have stored in the variable conn. That is connect. You want to give the name as per your choice, like A, B or C. But if you print what's there in conn, it hardly shows you anything. Like this. I've executed that. Okay, so this is the output. So it simply shows you some pointer to connection, memory pointer and all. So the moral of the story, you can't get any meaningful information if you try to print it. Hoping you are understanding. Yeah, fine. So somehow we successfully managed to connect to the MySQL server. Now to access table, create table, insert row, edit row, delete table, to perform any SQL manipulation upon the table and the table data, we actually need to create a cursor of that particular object. What does that mean? Check. Fine. I simply say here, say cur is equals to, what is the name of my variable that is holding connection details? conn. Okay, I write conn dot cursor. Okay, now people, cursor functions actually help us to execute queries in MySQL database. I hope you got my point. Is that okay? Fine. I repeat, yeah, it's actually a cursor object. People, it's actually provides us a cursor object. Fine. So the cursor function here allows us to execute SQL queries through Python program. Simple definition. It allows us to execute SQL query through Python program. And who creates cursor? Remember, always a connection object creates cursor. So we first need to create a connection, establish the connection. You first establish or create a connection, then using this connection object, in my case it was conn, using the connection object we create a cursor. Right? So let me execute this line number 4. It has got nothing to show you as an output. And if you want to see what this object cur contains, it makes no sense again to print. Okay. Let me still go ahead. It's working. Okay, fine. So the output is here. Sorry, there is nothing to execute. Okay, what are you trying to print? Cursor. The cursor has got nothing to execute. The cursor or a cursor object is created to execute SQL queries through Python program, people. Hoping you are understanding. To execute SQL queries through Python program. Right? For example, I want to execute a query called as, so let me write cur dot execute. Okay, now as simple as we write an, 1 minute, there's a spelling mistake here. Execute. Okay, the way we write a simple SQL query, same thing you need to write inside the quotes here. I hope you got my point. Same thing you need to write inside a quote here. Say I write here create database. Okay, so let the name of my database be, yesterday I created database 1, today I am creating database 2. Okay, so if I could run this, yeah, the query executed successfully. Right, there are two ways you can check whether this database got created or not. One, by writing a cursor dot execute. There's a query called as show databases that shows all the available databases in the account. Okay, so if I could run this, what was that? Why we stored in some variable, ma'am? We always store object in a variable, na Navin? Objects are always stored in a variable, right? When you create a cursor, it is actually a pointer that is going to execute the queries. Fine. Okay, fine. Anyways, I'll come back to this query again, that is show databases. Why it has not yet shown any database here to me. Meanwhile, if I could come back into my workbench and if I just refresh this, if you just refresh this, okay, you find the database 2 created here. Okay, you see the database 2 that has been created here, right? Okay, but this query did not show me any output because when you execute this type of query, select star from table, show databases, the cursor is like a pipe that gets filled with output. Okay, imagine it's like a pipe. Okay, this gets filled and loaded with the data, and this pipe will vomit the data only one by one, record by record, line by line, right? So this is not going to show you any output. You instead have to iterate over the content of the cursor. You understood? I repeat the point again. You have to iterate over the content of the cursor if cursor is filled with output, so that it can vomit the content on the screen line by line, one by one, row by row, record by record, etc. How to do that? So I say for I in cursor, as of now, print I. Okay, so as long as there is a content in the cursor, I will get printed. The moment the cursor is all empty, that means it will be done, that all shown on the screen, that show databases. Fine, so let me run these 2 lines of code. Okay, so you could see all these databases that is present there is also present here, and somewhere I can also see my database which was just created, that is database 2. You also stop me if you notice. Okay, so this was the database we created, that is database 2, right? I hope you understood. Fine, line number 7, we made cursor to execute the query show databases, but the query did not produce any output here, because whenever a cursor achieves or receives an output, it gets filled in. It gets filled with the output like a pipe, and all this stuff cannot come out from the pipe all at once. This will be vomited out from the pipe one by one. So unless or until the cursor is emptied, I hope you got my point. Unless and until the cursor is emptied, you can't expect it to run maybe any another query. Fine, so for I in cursor, print I. One by one we are printing the things out from the cursor and displaying it. Please acknowledge if this content was understood, if this particular code was understood. Fine. Okay, now I want to create another table, people, in database 2. Right, so first of all, I'll have to execute it. Come on, cursor.execute. You remembered, use database query, because there are so many databases in root's account. People, there are so many databases in the root account, people. I hope there is no data type, but it is of the type object. Navin, you're asking indeed a good question. Cursor has no data type. I hope you got me. It is of the type cursor. It is object of the class cursor. Is that fine? Come on, I come back to this point. Before we create a table, we have to make a particular database active. So if you have remembered, yesterday also we have used this query, use the database. Correct? So today let me say use database, database 2. Database 2. Is that okay? The query has got nothing to show as an output. It will just make my database active. Now whatever tables I create, it's going to be but obvious created in database 2. Fine. So let me create this table 1. So execute. Okay. So say I'm creating a table called as an employee table. Okay. So create table. Same guys. Same. The queries are same. Okay. So create table employee. Like yesterday, I don't want the table to contain too many columns. I'm happy with just 2 or 3 columns. So let's say ID of the employee, which is integer, or name of the employee, ename, which is string, and string has a data type varchar for SQL. Let me say this is string of length 10. Okay, and let me take one more column, say employee also has a salary. Okay, salary. You want, you can declare it to be some double or float. I again prefer to keep it as integer. Alright, fine. I hope there is nothing wrong in this query, so I attempt to run this. Line number 11, people. I attempt to run this. Okay, my terminal shows that the query has executed successfully. Fine. Again, there are two ways. Either you write a query which will show the available tables. Other way is come back here into workbench. This is database 2. Inside database 2 you will find a table that is employee. Am I right? An employee table has these three columns: ID, name and salary. If it is readable, करेक्ट. तो ये सब हमने नहीं बनाया है वर्कबेंच में. इनफैक्ट वी आर क्रिएटिंग दिस थ्रू द पाइथन कोड. Am I right? We are creating all these through the Python code. Come on, if I suppose for today, if I say now use database 2, and from database 2, if I say select all the columns from employee table, so it shows me that the table is empty, people. Am I right? Yeah, the table is empty. So let us insert the rows in this table, not from here, that is through SQL queries, but from Python workflow. Am I right? Or the Python code. So let's come back to our Visual Studio Code. We all know how to insert record in a table, as one or two simple queries we have executed yesterday or day before. So cursor.execute. Okay, cursor.execute. So let me say insert. Okay, insert into table name, which is employee, these particular values. Okay, these particular, you can do 100 of things here, like you can insert multiple rows also at a time. The way I'm inserting rows just one by one, you can also insert multiple rows at a time. But as I told you in the last class, we are not interested here in learning. We are not interested here in learning MySQL. We are more intended towards Python. So we are restricting ourselves up to that knowledge. Okay, insert into employee these particular values. I would be glad if somebody is working along with me. If you are also coding along with me, people, we would be glad. So that in case if you face or come across any technical issue or an error, the time we spend together, it can be figured out. ठीक है, चलिए. So what is the first column of the table? Employee ID. Let me say ID is 1. Name of the employee say is Mr. Raj. Salary of the employee, so that is 12,500. Okay, I run this query. Okay, it has executed successfully. So let me come back into workbench, and then now if I run the same query, okay, it still doesn't show you. Am I right? It is still not showing you. See, I just executed. In case if such thing happens, what you have to do, you have to run the query called as commit, people. Okay, so sometimes the data is not saved even though the query executes. The changes or the data is not saved even though the query executes. Fine. So in that case, if it is not showing you any data or any changes, make sure that you run the query commit. Commit means save the changes permanently. Although commit has many more meanings and application that we will again study in our MySQL module. Okay, fine. Just let me commit the changes. Okay, fine, Naveen. ठीक है. Let me commit the changes. Let me come back here. Let me run this single query. And you could see the data has been inserted here in the row. Guys, I would be glad if somebody acknowledge आपको यहाँ तक का procedure समझा. Okay, this one record today, that is Raj, Mr. Raj ka record, we have not added from SQL query through MySQL workbench. Instead, it has been added from Python code, correct? Through Python code. So what if I want to add more 2 rows, people? What if I want to add more 2 rows? Okay, although I can write query to insert multiple rows, but just for simplicity, okay, I paste this, I just change the ID. Employee number 2, say he is not Raj, he is Rajesh, and his salary is something 55,000. The third guy, this fellow is Mr. Wilson. Okay, salary is something 32,500. Okay, understood, thank you. So let me run these 2 rows also, line number 13, line number 14. First come into workbench, again run this, but it is still not updating or reflecting. That means the changes are not yet saved permanently. So let me come back here and execute the commit query. We execute the commit query, people. Okay, commit executed, again refresh it or open it. Fine, so the rows, no, yet not. Okay, yet not, it is showing. Fine, let me check what's wrong. Okay, I think the query was not okay, fine, it is now here. Is that okay? All of us? Fine. Correct. So this is how we wrote queries to create table, to maybe to insert the rows in the table. Yes, you can update a lot of things here in case if you're wondering. So now I realize the name of the second person is not Rajesh, he's Mr. Mukesh. So there are many DDL, DML queries of SQL. So let me say this way, cursor.execute. Okay, this time I'm not interested in inserting but updating, right? So update. Okay, need not to break your head, we will be learning these queries in MySQL. In case if any of you wondering, what if I want to change the data, right? So update my table employee. How and what? This is the 2 question it is going to ask. How you want to update? Say I want to update, matlab set ename as Mukesh. Okay, set the name as Mukesh where ID is equals to 2. I hope you got my point. Where ename and IDs are nothing but the column names respectively. So change the name of that person to Mukesh whose ID is 2. Now I said whose ID is 2 because I am very confident there is only one guy whose ID is 2. Am I right? Fine. Let's see whether it runs also or not. It happens also or not. Fine. So let me commit it and check there. Okay, so it shows me right now the name as Rajesh, and if I could open the table again, fine, so it has been updated from Rajesh to Mukesh, right? So this was not a big deal. Yes, of course you can do that, but every time I don't want to come back into workbench and open the table to check the changes. You got my point? हर बार ऐसा पीछे workbench में आके I don't want to open the table and check the changes, whether it happened or not, it occurred or took place or not, for verification. I want this thing to happen right on the Python terminal. So how can we do that? Come on, let us execute a query. I hope by now you have understood how cursor is used to execute the queries, and how cursor is created through a connection object. Am I right? Cursor is created through a connection object. ठीक है, fine. So cursor dot execute. People, cursor dot execute. Let me open that table. Okay, so select star from employee. Right, but if I could run this, unfortunately you find no output of this query. Okay, unfortunately you find no output of this query because the reason is same. Again, your cursor is filled with the output, people. A cursor is like a pipe. See, like this object that I'm holding in my hand, this cursor is like a pipe. It has been filled with all output inside, and this output need to be vomited out one row by row, one at a time. Right? It cannot all come out at once. Like for example, this room has a capacity of 20 people. I hope you got my point. Correct, Naveen. I have to print it in loop. I give you one more example. इस कमरे में 20 लोग आ सकते हैं या रह सकते हैं. अरे but 20 people cannot come in one go ना. Am I right? एक साथ में 20 people cannot enter. Maybe one at a time or max to max 2 at a time. So that is what is the story of a cursor. It's like a pipe and it gets filled with an output. This output cannot be flushed out all once. एक साथ में वो flush नहीं होता है. एक एक करके बाहर लाया जाता है. हाँ, एक साथ में फ्लश नहीं किया जा सकता है. फाइन. आई थिंक नवीन हैज रिटन द कोड फॉर अस फॉर x in cursor print x. So let me not break my head if he has helped us. Let us put the same code here. So for x in cursor, okay, simply print x. Okay, simply print x. Okay, so let me run these two lines of code. Oh, good, cool. I think this was pretty cool. Like we don't have to really go back every time. Friends, we don't have to really go back every time and check the data or output in the workbench. So similarly, if I update this name from Mukesh to say Sukesh, okay, I updated the name again, executed the query, committing the changes and running these 3 lines of code. Let me check Mukesh से Sukesh हुआ भी कि नहीं. Okay, so it's been achieved here. Is that okay? All fine. So this is how we are connecting our table to the database. I'm sorry, we are connecting a Python engine to MySQL database. Right? Acha, if suppose you don't want to always create a database and then write the query, you don't want to do all these things like create database, show database and all. So you can write the database name right at the time of connection. For example, let me write a new code for that. Okay, let me not change this code because I will be sending you this code. So let me create a new file. Say day24.py. Okay, let me run this. Okay, fine. So SQL.connect, host name localhost, user is admin account, password is 1234, and right here also you can provide the name of the database you want to connect to or you want to use. So that will be the 4th argument. After logging into this account, open the database whose name is database2. Okay, that's an optional argument, people, in case if you don't want to use or if you want to create a new one. So that's an optional argument always. Is that okay? Fine. So let's see whether these 2 queries are working or not. Whether these 2 queries are running or not. Fine. Yup, it is. So what if I write database 3? Okay, database 3, in case if I do that. Sorry, unknown database, because इस नाम का कोई database है ही नहीं. So one thing is proved, you can provide database as an argument only which is an existing database, not the one which is not existing. It's not going to create on its own. Am I right? I would be glad if somebody could acknowledge to me in the chat section this last error understood or not. या आपको समझाई दिया कि नहीं? Right? So if you do not want to again write the query like use database or show database and do hundreds of such formalities, so better provide the name of the database that you want to access to. Right? So I'm just writing your database 1, let me say, because one which we created yesterday already exists here. Okay, so the query has executed successfully, and from database 1 yesterday we also created one table student. Yes, Naveen, that can be done. Naveen is very right. It exists only in database, you can do that. Okay, Alright, so I want to open that student table which I created yesterday. But to open a table, I will have to write the query, and to write a query, we need a cursor object. We need cursor. So let's first create a cursor. I store cursor in A. Connection object creates a cursor. Okay, connection objects creates a cursor. So let me run this query. Oh, this is not a query, this is a code. Fine. Okay, and I simply write a.execute select star from student table. You saw one thing, you don't have to write the query now, use database, because that database name you have already provided as an argument here. Okay, select star from student. Next, if I write here for I in A, okay, I simply say print I. Correct. Fine. So how could I do that? So I think my cursor is being emptied out. Am I right? I hope you got my point. Raj, Mukesh, Rajesh and John, these were the 4 student details that we had entered yesterday. I hope you got my point. All of us here. Fine, we can do hundreds of things, friends. दुनिया भर की चीज़ें हम यहाँ पे करते हैं. Like I can delete a record from the table. I can drop the table itself. I can write many query to create constraints, check constraint and so on. But this part we will be more dealing with in Django. Alright, we are never going to write this type of connectivity code, but it is important for us to understand how to connect a backend engine in Python. You understand? Fine, हम कभी भी SQL को ऐसे connect करेंगे main project में, opportunity or the chances are less, because once you expose yourself to Django, you really don't find the need of all these stuffs. Hoping you are understanding it. Fine. Okay, let's put together all that we have learned today. All that we have learned up until now. Ab tak ka. Right? If we first learned how to create a connection to the SQL server. While you create connection to the SQL server, minimum 3 arguments are required. This is a summary of the topic conducted up until now so far. Okay, the first argument is name of the server. Second argument, whose account. It's like a descending order you are following. Okay, name of the server, under that name of the account, inside that name of the database, inside that name of the table. You will have to write in the code, not as an argument of the connect function. Okay, you don't have to write it as an argument of the connect function. Hoping you are understanding. Just a moment, please. Just a moment. Okay. Okay, fine. Okay, done. We were searching for the attendance link. Somehow we missed it. We'll see. We'll manage with that. Okay, fine. And then we followed with our connect function with a cursor. It's not connection object that executes the query, but connection object creates a cursor, and cursor is used to execute a query. Hoping you are understanding. Fine. We executed the query like creating a database, show the database, but when you run the queries like show database or select star from the table, your cursor gets filled with lot of data inside. And as I repeatedly explained you, all this data cannot be flushed out at once. This data need to be brought out one by one, row by row. That's the reason we loop over it. Hoping you are understanding it. Is that okay? Fine. Now in WAMP server concept, I will let you know once I install, because if I install the WAMP server, I have a lot of my setup which will be changed here. Alright, fine. So keep waiting till then. By the time I show the class what is WAMP, how to use WAMP and all, जब तक हमको उसका ज़रूरत नहीं है, we won't do that. Okay, so I will not confuse people with that unless and until it is the day I feel that no, WAMP server can use करना ही पड़ेगा, then I will force you to do it. Hoping you are understanding. Fine. Okay, now listen to my point. We are left with these main topics. Regular expression, that is the next upcoming topic. People, regular expression. Then we have something called as web scraping, web scraping. So either the Friday's topic would be regular expression or web scraping. Yeah, these two. Next one that is upcoming is our Flask. Okay, Flask is again a small tool for web development that helps Python to create web pages and connect to some, access some backend and all. Fine. So these are the few topics that we are remaining to complete the Python module now. Number one, as I told you, web scraping. Then comes our regular expression, that's important. Then comes our Flask. We will also learn how to create some API services, people. What is API? How to create an API services? Either I will take the topic in Python or we will keep that a module separate API. Right? So that decision is yet to be taken. So mostly by the end of the next week we will be completing Python, and by taking 1 or 2 days of break we will be starting with Django module. I hope you got my point. Fine. All your documents and the notes which is remaining, we shall be forwarding you soon. Right? Once I start regular expression, I need a continuous 1 hour of time. I cannot extend the class beyond 6 o'clock today due to the connected lectures. That's the reason we will stop here and start the topic with a fresh mind back on Friday. I hope you got my point. Is that okay, all of us? In case if you have any doubt, any question, please put to us in the chat section. I'll end the stream. You have to wait for 2 minutes for our attendance link to come. Okay, you still have to wait for 2 minutes for our attendance link to come. I'm here only if you still have any doubt to ask. Okay, goodbye, take care.